So I am not Alan Beauchamp, as you can tell. My name is Wendy Manis, and I am filling in for Alan Beauchamp. And this is Between the Lines. We are so excited to be here with you tonight. We have a great show, and I think you're going to really like it. It's a little different from what Alan does, but he turned me loose on this, so I decided to show you something that I'm really passionate about and excited that's coming to Anderson County. So it is going to be all about music and bluegrass and a new program that will be coming and helping children learn instruments. So I'm super excited, and I want to introduce some people here tonight, and then I'm going to let them show you kind of what they are doing and have learned over the years. But I have Cody Bauer here with me, and Cody Bauer works for JAM Kids, and that stands for Junior Appalachian Musicians, and he is the field office coordinator, and Cody is a wonderful bluegrass fiddler. Yeah. I was going to say violinist, but there's a difference when you play bluegrass and if it's a violin or a fiddle. And then my husband, I know him well over here, is Jonathan Manis, and Jonathan is also a great musician and teacher. So you guys want to start us off with playing something?
Sure.
And what are you going to play?
We'll do a tune here called Angela and the Baker, a popular old-time fiddle tune here.
Take it away. I get to hear these guys all the time play, and I am so excited for them to share their passion with you about Junior Appalachian Musicians. And I know both of you learned music from a young age, didn't you?
Yep.
And Cody, how did you start taking music lessons, and how did you get into the bluegrass music?
Yeah, so I started when I was 12 years old. My mom's side of the family played music some, and my grandpa was really into bluegrass music, and my cousins. And anyways, my grandpa took us to some festivals growing up in Indiana, and and I started playing fiddle when I was 12 and took lessons, and been playing ever since. I've been playing about 20 years now.
And what have you actually been able to do, because you started at such a young age? What are some of the venues that you have been able to play over the years that have, I know what they are, but I want you to tell the people, because learning a musical instrument and then taking that knowledge and continuing to play as you get older, it leads you into some really amazing things, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've played a lot locally around Knoxville and East Tennessee generally, but I've played as far away as Ireland, as far north as Prince Edward Island, Canada, as far south as Belize in Central America.
And you played the Opry too, right?
Yes, I did. I was lucky. I got lucky. Yeah, I got to play with Ralph Stanley. It was actually his last Grand Ole Opry show before he passed away, and I was filling in on a couple weekend runs, and one of those happened to be an Opry show.
So
yeah,
you've gotten to
really
do
cool.
really great things just because you started as a child learning your instrument. And Jonathan, you started and you were kind of self-taught, right?
Yeah, so my dad worked for the military. We were a civilian contractor family. And so in 1989, we moved to Germany. We were sort of isolated just because there wasn't the internet yet. The only media we really had was a VCR and a bunch of DuckTales tapes, honestly. So we wore out those VHSs. And between wearing out the VHSs, the only thing left to do was play music. So my brother played the mandolin, my mother played piano, my dad played banjo. And so music was all around us, enriching our lives in our own little kind of isolated bubble. We went to American schools, but we were on the economy, as they say. And so this was kind of how we passed the time, how we maintained a connection and a sense of place across an ocean pre the internet.
Right, because not going to Germany and not knowing the language as a young child, because you were 10 when you got there, you had to find something to do.
Yep,
and
that's way worse things to have as a hobby as a 10-year-old.
Right, and so if you don't know, Jonathan plays guitar, mandolin, banjo, dobro. He does not play fiddle, but he does a lot of different things, and it all stems back to him learning as a young child at 11 years old or so. And he's left-handed but plays right-handed guitar, and he taught himself. So I like to brag on him, but he is a wonderful musician. And you also have done some really great things along the years just because you picked up an instrument, correct?
Yeah, so in the aughts, I was touring overseas, leading bands of European friends, on 3 or 4 musical tours through Eastern and Western Europe. So that included the Czech Republics, the Slovak Republics. We went around and did some Germany stuff. We did Switzerland. Actually, Wendy was lucky enough to get to go on two or three tours that included Switzerland towards the end of that time. Really, music's kind of the thing that chose me and kind of took me to a place where I could both escape from the normal stresses of growing up and also find a way to have a very rich existence without the virtue of video games and cable TV like kids had over here. And it was a good thing. It took me to lots of places when I was in my 20s and in the aughts and teens. I was working with bands like Valerie Smith, gospel group Young Harmony, just doing the hustle as you do when you're a younger man trying to find your way and find some adventure and do what you love. And, those are great stories. And, tough times because touring on the road is not necessarily easy, but as a teacher at Pellissippi, some of those tough times turn into teachable moments for the 20-year-olds in my classroom now. So every bit of that stuff has a place.
And you're still involved in music, even working at Pellissippi and doing some other things throughout Knoxville, correct? And even Oak Ridge.
Yeah, so those of you guys that are just meeting us, Wendy and I, we've somehow found our way to being very present in the civic community, mainly because we wanted to see good things happen for East Tennessee, good things happen for Anderson County and Oak Ridge. And so all the things I'm doing now have kind of holistically turned into a unified front. So you have coming off the road, realizing I needed some retirement funds and some health care, I started doing audio production work as a contractor, supplementing my musical income with that, knowing that there was probably some sort of way to have a steady income stream and find a second career in my 30s. And that's exactly what happened. It took a minute, but I was mixing at Cokesbury Church. I was mixing at various other churches around town, and lo and behold, Pellissippi had a need for somebody who had an actual, college diploma, 4-year degree, but also had some real life, hard-won School of Hard Knocks skills in audio production and music. So that turned into a tenure track position. I'm actually up for tenure this year. That's been taking up a lot of my free bandwidth because that's a whole 10-page document we do to get promoted at colleges. So this is not a toot my own horn thing. It's just part of the cycle. And so the college position has led me back to music with a show called Appalachia Sessions, which is actually being taped at the Bijou on Monday night, the 13th. The show is to promote literacy and cultural literacy in East Tennessee. The room will be full of students from all over East Tennessee and all over Knoxville. The show features Chris Blue. Cody's in the house band playing fiddle with that. We're going to do a few songs from the Stevie Wonder repertoire and from the Black Pumas repertoire, and then we're going to feature singer-songwriter Sean Camp, another bluegrass connection. So, you know, in a really weird way, I'm always involved in music. One of the ways I'm involved in Anderson County Oak Ridge is that my company does all the audio production for Oak Ridge Summer Sessions. So if you've been to one of those shows at Alvin K. Bissell Park in the last 4 years, that is a crew full of Pellissippi students and graduates who are learning, you know, the real world skills of advancing shows, making sure the artist is happy, making sure that the production goes off without a hitch. And it's been a great pleasure working with ORNL Federal Credit Union. Tom and Colin over there have been really good to me over the years, and I'm just really proud and happy to give back, both, you know, in the musical ways and the production ways. That's connecting a lot of different dots.
So would you say if you had never picked up an instrument, do you think that your path would have been like this?
Oh, absolutely not. Like everything, you know, every person on the planet has to choose between an avocation and a vocation at some point. And sometimes you're lucky enough to get to do both. And without having a basic understanding of how wood vibrates, I wouldn't have a basic understanding of how, you know, the light that's getting to your eyes at your television sets at home and the vibrations that are coming from this microphone and getting to your speaker sets at home. Like, it's really just, you know, physics, and we're all trapped by the bounds of physics one way or another. But having a really core understanding of what moves air is the same as having a really core understanding of what moves people, because they're the same thing. And that's really why we're sitting here to talk about Cody's program today, because what moves people is a full mind connection between the analytical and the emotional. And that's really what music's about. And if you enrich children's lives in that area when they are in their target time of their development for learning speech, which is between 2 and 6. And then, you know, there's some speech, obviously some of us that speak second languages have learned them in adulthood and later in childhood. But this is a language, the fiddle, the old time, the bluegrass, the tradition, and how it connects to all the other genres in the world. All of that is a form of language, and we're trying to teach both Appalachia Sessions, both Jam, jamkids.org is the website there. We're trying to teach literacy so we can have an enriched existence for children of Appalachia, children all over the world who may be interested in Appalachian folk art. And so this is a passion project for me because of a history we'll probably talk about a little later.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about getting into this because I grew up in Mississippi and I didn't have this opportunity that we're about to talk about, and because it was a very small town. We had one person that taught guitar and piano, but, you know, they get overrun with people coming in and they don't have enough room, or it's a very poor state and county, and so sometimes parents just don't have the money, and my parents were both business owners, and so it was either they run their business or they run me all over town, and so I just kind of had to learn to sing at church, which has also benefited me in that aspect. But learning from you guys as an adult and learning the instrument has been difficult but very eye-opening, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. And we have Cody here today to talk about this program, Junior Appalachian Musicians. And as you've heard, like, learning a musical instrument, it can change your life and put you on a path that is just, it's life-changing, and you go on to impact people for the whole, like, rest of your lives. And Cody, so how long have you been with Jam?
So I've been with Jam a year and a half now. The first year I was part-time doing program development, which we can talk a little bit about later, and now I also have a fundraising component to the job.
Okay, so you've been doing it for a little bit. You've got your feet wet, and so you are creating programs now around Knox County, Blount County, and we're wanting to bring it to Anderson County. We do have a location lined up, so now we just have to put all of the rest in place. But it's kind of cool because Cody started playing with us about 10 years ago and was just like, he's like our little brother. But he got into this, and him and Jonathan kind of like immediately like started talking about it, because Jonathan was there when Junior Appalachian Musicians was being created when you were in college, right?
Yeah, so this is an important story for me. You know, when I left high school, my folks were in New Bern, North Carolina. Dad was still working his military job as a contractor. He wound up at Cherry Point Air Corps Station, way down near the beach where we still like to go. And so they found their way to Winston-Salem, and I found my way to kind of a heartland of Appalachian traditional music at Appalachian State in Boone, North Carolina. Boone is obviously, the site of Merle Fest, which is one of the major acoustic festivals still in the world today, in honor of Merle Watson, Doc Watson's son, who passed in a tragic tractor accident in the 80s. And so as a college student, it was, great. Big deal that last weekend in April to travel 45 minutes down the mountain to Deep Gap and hear the acoustic all-stars that were still in their heyday then. Sam Bush, who's still playing, Jerry Douglas, who's still playing, Tony Rice, who's no longer with us. As people have passed on and my musical heroes have moved on to other planes, it's become important for me to recognize my place in that history. Small, whatever that looks like. It may feel small to you, but it's important to me to make sure that whoever I interact with, there are no neutral interactions. I tell my students that all the time. We choose to either, tear somebody down or lift them up. And so that's sort of what drives my life. And so in thinking back to those days, I remember that I had a dear friend by the name of Wayne Henderson who still builds guitars. He's still with us. And his girlfriend Helen White, asked me after meeting me a fefew times. I was 20-something. She said, "Hey, you want to be in this swing band together?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm not playing a lot of swing. I'm studying classical guitar and have bluegrass gigs with the kind of hippie grass bands there in Boone that were a big deal then, and still are. Asheville. A lot of those cats are still playing around Asheville and making great music influenced by West Coast acoustic music, the Grateful Dead and such." So Helen said, "Yeah, come up. Drive up to Mouth of Wilson off the New River, the oldest river in the Appalachians, and play the swing music with us." And so she welcomed me into that whole circle. And our bass player was a fellow by the name of Mark Rose. Well, we did that for, off and on whenever we had gigs for, 3 to 5 years. And they were very kind to me. And as a man who was 6 hours from his parents, a young man who was looking for community, those were important, impactful interactions. Those were interactions that lifted me up and made my quality of life much higher than eating, Wendy's, having to walk down the street, down River Street from the dorm in the snow and eat Wendy's, hamburgers in December in Boone. It was, you might say it was pretty lonesome. And Helen and Mark really changed that and gave me kind of an outlet and a warm place to create and learn something, which is important. So, at the time I was peripherally aware of JAM, Junior Appalachian Musicians, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so if you think back to the 90s in Appalachia, rural Appalachia, Southwest Virginia and Western North Carolina, that was when the methamphetamine craze really took off. And so you had a lot of, families you had a lot of families impacted by folks doing very scary things in households and communities with very scary chemicals. And so it was all over the news. Watauga and Avery County at that time were leading the state of North Carolina in methamphetamine problems. And so bringing that full circle, Helen realized that there was a lack of a point of pride for Appalachian children in the 90s and said, you know what? And I think it was earlier than the 90s that she started. I walked into this as a participant, not as somebody who was taking on Junior Appalachian Musicians as a stakeholder at the time. I just knew about it. But I know that Helen was pouring into me the way that she was pouring into those students in Sparta, North Carolina, Allegheny County, in Mouth of Wilson, in Rugby, Volney, Grayson Highlands. I mean, I don't know the numbers because, again, I didn't live there and I was driving an hour to be at rehearsal. But she was doing amazing things and I knew about it. So fast forward to, my 40s, my late 30s, 40s, and Cody and I have known each other 10 years or so now and played gigs together with Wendy for 10 years or so now. And Cody says, hey, I'm getting involved in JAM. And I said, no kidding. Guess what? Guess what about JAM? I know about JAM, and this is why. And so I was able to tell this great story about Helen's impact in rural communities in North Carolina and her impact in my life, knowing that, when we started having the discussions about what JAM was going to do in East Tennessee, Mark Rose, our bass player from that group that I played with, he passed away in his tent at a festival doing what he loved, playing old time and acoustic music. I felt like he had years left, and he didn't. And then in the middle of the COVID pandemic, we lost Helen, and she had a good run. It wasn't so much a surprise for Helen. She did great things, and it was timely. But as a 40-something, it's weird being the last surviving member of a band, and
Right.
especially with people who had been so incredibly good to me in my early 20s. So we entered into that conversation in a timely way, and I was like, you know what, if we're going to do this, I need to be a part of it, because Helen was a part of my life in a really positive way, and music's been a part of my life in a really positive way. And I said, you know what, let's do whatever we can to make sure Cody's successful in East Tennessee, bringing Appalachian music and folk arts to any student that wants to learn it in any school system or community that wants to encourage it. And so that's why we're sitting on this TV set right now.
Yes, it is. And when we come back, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how that's going to impact Anderson County from this short trip around history and how we got to bringing it to Anderson County and Cody being a part of it. So we'll be right back.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
When should you get tested for COVID-19? You have symptoms of COVID-19, such as runny nose, congestion, sore throat, fever, cough, shortness of breath, muscle pain, headache, chills, or loss of taste or smell. Current testing recommendations say everyone should get tested immediately if they have symptoms of COVID-19. If you have symptoms, be sure to follow recommendations about how long to stay home and away from others. For more information, visit our If You Are Sick or Test Positive webpage.
In East Tennessee, winter can be a wild ride of constantly changing weather and cold outdoor fun. Warm up with natural gas heat, hot water, cooking, and soft, comfy clothes. More affordable and reliable than electricity, natural gas makes homes cozy and more valuable. Whether you're a contractor or savvy homeowner, switch to natural gas for your primary energy source. Visit us online at orud.org or call today. Oak Ridge Utility District, your affordable energy source.
And we are back. I am Wendy Manis. I'm filling in for Alan Beauchamp. He's out taking a rest for a little bit. He's just worn out. I tell you what, I told him he needed to slow down. So he was like, okay, you do my show. But anyway, we are super excited about being here. We've been talking about the history of junior Appalachian musicians, and Jonathan just told you about his story and how it impacted him. And now Cody is involved in junior I can't talk today.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, junior Appalachian musicians. And so, Cody, how has it grown since Jonathan knew Helen in the 90s? How has Jam grown?
So Jam is all throughout Southern Appalachia now. So we have 56 chapters. There's several in Southwest Virginia, in Western North Carolina, in the northern part of South Carolina. We just adopted one of the Pick and Bow programs, actually, in Eastern Kentucky, and there's 7 Jam programs in East Tennessee. And the newest one is at the Great Smoky Mountain Heritage Center in Townsend, Tennessee, in Font County. And we're getting ready to start one in Anderson County.
Yes.
So in Clinton.
We are so excited about that too. And can you tell them a little bit, like, what is Jam? What does Jam do for children? Is it just like, people come in, they have music lessons in a traditional setting, and they cost a lot of money? How does that all work?
No, so Jam is actually group lessons for kids. It's typically an 8-to-1 student-teacher ratio. So what it looks like is the kids come in, they break off into their respective groups, whether they're learning banjo, fiddle, guitar, mandolin, and they're all learning together with other kids. And typically the music is taught by ear, although we do have tab books available now, and some teachers will choose to teach by sheet music as well. But for the most part, it's taught by ear, and that's how the music has been passed down over the years. So I feel like it translates best that way. And what was the other part of your question?
I don't remember. You answered it all, but what kind of instruments do they start out learning? Like, I know there's some harder instruments. Do they start with like a banjo, or what do they learn?
I would say most programs start out with 3 instruments: banjo, fiddle, guitar, and then later they'll add mandolin. And most of the students, when they come in, they're beginners. And eventually, as the program goes along, you'll have an intermediate and an advanced level class.
Okay, so, and what do the classes typically cost? Like, when you look at taking a lesson, I know sometimes parents, myself as a parent, would be like, oh my gosh, like, I can't afford that, because here in Anderson County, like, the median household income is $55,000. So, especially right now, parents are trying to pick and choose what their kids learn, or what, if they're going to buy eggs or not. There's just all of these things they have to take into account. So for those parents that are thinking that this might be too expensive for them to even get their children involved in, because they have to look for an instrument and all of these costs to take into account, how does that work?
Yeah, so Jam, private instruction is quite expensive, but Jam is very affordable. And so basically how it works is it's a sliding scale tuition with a base fee that's already pretty low. And that varies from program to program, but it's very affordable. No kid is turned away. And so we basically have a base fee, a reduced fee, and then there's need-based scholarships available as well.
That is so.
And we also provide the instruments for the kids as well. I should note that. That's important. So.
Oh wow, that's really amazing, because the instrument alone, most of the time, I know from having to hear conversations, not having, but hearing conversations, being present, when you talk about like new fiddles that you have purchased, or Jonathan buys a new guitar, like, it's not really a cheap thing to do if you're wanting to invest to be the best you can be. And having an instrument in hand when you're learning is very important, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's a big part of our mission, is being able to make it affordable and being able to provide instruments for the kids as well.
So what are the benefits of even learning a musical instrument?
I would say, there's a lot of research out there about how it's good for brain development and so on. But what comes to mind for me personally is it's just enriched my life quite a bit. So through the people I've gotten to meet, it's a very communal form of music, bluegrass and old time music especially, and even in the way that we're going about teaching it as a group, it's communal from the get-go. And then just like the places you get to travel, music will take you places. So I would say the people you get to meet, the places you get to go, it's good for your brain. So all those things. It's artistic expression as well.
Yeah, because I know I started learning a musical instrument in my 30s, but I always went to church and I would sing with, we had children's choir, and so the children's choir would learn music. But you hear these stories about people who have learned music and they come down with Alzheimer's or dementia, but they can still remember music, or they can still play a piano or their instrument, because it is very beneficial and life enriching. It is very beneficial. And what you will learn with me as we go throughout this next couple of weeks is that I can't be too serious, because if I am, then I just stumble all over my words. So
it's all good.
This is just me, and this is us here, so Alan will probably kill me. But anyhow, Jonathan, when you were learning as a young child, did you learn by ear, or did your dad? I know your dad played banjo. So how did that work for you, because you taught yourself?
Well, to say I taught myself is a little bit maybe a misnomer, because just like, children learn words from their parents and their speech development path, it's a similar thing. So the language of the major and minor scales was kind of omnipresent in my house. I remember very distinctly sitting in a tiny little house in rural Kentucky with Mom practicing Mozart on an upright piano. That, it's a tiny little house, kerosene heated house in rural Kentucky, and she's learning Mozart on a piano that's impossible to keep in tune and in good repair compared to, the standards that I know that Steinways are kept. This was almost a laughable thing, but those are very warm memories, understanding how music hits different places in your brain with different colors of scale, and also understanding how music affects your passage of time. And anytime we watch a movie, we're manipulating our perception of that 2.5 hours of the movie we're watching. Like, each intense moment slows down time for us. So artistic expression is a form of linear control of our environment. And so if you think back to how that affects music, in pre-electricity, pre-captured recordings, you had this big void of sounds. You had these very active industrial age activities that were happening, and so we understood the world suddenly as humans to be a very loud place, raising our noise floor and shattering the idyllic stillness of thousands of years of pastoral scenes. And the industrial age was sort of a traumatic shock, right? This is a big shift in humans' aural soundscapes. And then you move forward to the rural areas of Appalachia, where folks had come to, for whatever reason, things had become untenable in the old country, and so people, came in the 1600s to a very quiet place again, without the benefit of this noisy soundscape. And something, namely the instruments here, had to fill the void. The violin could be handcrafted; it could be passed down generation to generation. So you had this expression of a creation, and you had this expression of a vibration. And so rather than have to hear silence and have to wonder if there were bad people or bad creatures in the woods, that's how Appalachian filled that void with something they could control. And in the same way we watch Netflix, we're filling our evenings and our free time with something we can control, and an emotional ride we can control. And that is what 300 to 400 years of Appalachian culture looks like. It took songs from the Irish and Scottish traditions. It embraced them and kept them and carried them over to provide those people with a sense of place, in the same way that music provided me with a sense of place as an expat from, at the time we moved from Kentucky to Germany. This artistic expression, this form of expression, this craft connects a lot of dots in how people find and retain culture.
And speaking of culture, I know that junior Appalachian musicians, they focus on bluegrass music and the Appalachian sound. Why the bluegrass and Appalachian sound? And Jonathan, you may know, Cody, either one of you can answer this question.
Yeah, Appalachian music, when we think of Appalachian music, we think of bluegrass and old-time music. So throughout our 56 chapters throughout Southern Appalachia, some of the programs focus more on old-time music, some of the programs focus more on bluegrass music. If you're not familiar with the differences between those, they have a shared history, shared repertoire of tunes, some shared stylistic similarities, but they also have very distinct differences. And chronologically, old-time music predates bluegrass. So anyways, we have various chapters may focus on either old time or bluegrass, and some of them do both.
Oh, okay. So you can do both, or you can do one or the other. You're teaching me lots of things here. And so when you said they learn by ear, and Jonathan, either one of you can answer this as well. What is the importance of learning an instrument by ear? I know that I learned to sing by ear, but I can also read a little bit. But there's also musicians who can't read music at all, and they just know it all by ear. What is the importance of learning it by ear?
I think that it develops your ear, and it makes you better at improvising. At least that's what comes to mind for me.
Would you say the same thing, Jonathan, or do you have something to add?
Well, oh yeah. there's a whole big analysis. I've thought about this a lot, and I don't want to run away with it because it's not my show. Basically, when you assign concrete meaning to a word, that's the left half of the brain going, oh, great, this table is something I can tangibly pick up, touch, move, use. But if I say that I feel a certain way, that's the right half of the brain going, okay, that provides an emotional context to things that happen to me. And music is bridging that gap in real time every time you listen or participate in it. And so as we know, the mind is a muscle, and the more you can engage different pathways, different neural pathways in the brain, the more they stay connected, the more they enrich your life moving on to your later years. So just the very act of, you mentioned dementia patients having the ability to retain music later in life is because they conditioned and built those muscles earlier in life. And so taking part in a creative endeavor is literally weightlifting for your brain, because it's using more of it than your average repetitive tasks of picking up a fork. So, neurologists understand that when you pick up an instrument and constantly analyze every muscle that you're using and every action that's being created, the brain's lit up with magnetic and electrical energy as it does its job in a way that other tasks don't.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense as to why, like, dementia patients, and as they go throughout the years, they can remember the music, but maybe they don't remember, a story or a person. But music has a very, very strong impact on your life. And I know that, like, I don't know if you're like me, but I can walk into a room and forget what I'm doing, but a song will come on from 50 or 60 years ago, and I'm able to sing every word of it. And just like you guys are playing music now that's, some of it's 100, 150 years old, and they've learned these songs that have been passed down throughout the ages, and that's what Jam does. It continues that tradition. And now your teachers that you have, are they trained in bluegrass, or are they trained in, like, classical? How does that work with the teachers?
Yeah, the vast majority of the teachers are coming from a bluegrass or old-time background. And we look for teachers in the community that are living and working in the community, and that just makes sense from a number of angles.
Yeah, and we have some really talented teachers musicians that could be teachers here in Anderson County. And I know you and I and Jonathan started talking about bringing it to Anderson County, but why do you feel that it would be a great thing for Anderson County?
Well, I just know how much music has enriched my life personally, and I know that growing up, Jam would have been my favorite thing to go to every week. It would have been what I looked forward to. And so I want everybody to have that experience. And it just makes sense for East Tennessee and for Anderson County to have a Jam program. We're in the heart of East Tennessee, heart of Appalachia. The place music, bluegrass and old-time music, it makes sense contextually to have a program like that here.
Right, and Jam is a non-profit business, correct?
Correct, yeah. Jam is a non-profit 501c3. And the website, by the way, is jamkids.org. If you want to, there's all kinds of information on there. You can also go on YouTube and type in Junior Appalachian Musicians, and there's a 5-minute video that gives you some pretty good insight as to what a Jam program looks like, and is informative.
Right, and I know that we have done a little bit of reaching out on social media, talking to people to see if Jam would even work here in Anderson County, and we have had a great response for people saying, yes, please let me know.
Absolutely.
And so we started working on that because we hope to start in the spring, but if it doesn't happen, it definitely will happen in the fall, because we do have a place now. And Jonathan and I are going to kind of be coordinating it all, making sure with Cody that it is set up the way it's supposed to be set. But Cody, as far as so this would bring a lot to our community for children to start learning. Not only would it bring the community together, but it also could, have the potential impact to have festivals for these kids to play at and get out into the community and actually. Because I know sometimes it's Jonathan and I have played with the Ciderville group. And when we played with that Ciderville group, which they play country, bluegrass, old-timey, it's a sense of community. And we used to do the Tennessee Valley Barn Dance with John Hitch at the Ritz Theater. And that, too, was a sense of community. And I think being a part of a community is very important. And it seems like we've gotten so busy in our lives that we've lost that musical aspect. And we can watch it on TV, or we can watch it on TikTok, or we can watch it on YouTube, and we don't need to go to a live venue. But we forget that when we stay at home and do that, we're not connecting with our community. So I see it as like a chance to bring the community closer together, and those children being able to actually impact that community throughout the years. Would you say that's probably the case, Jonathan?
Oh yeah, anytime you do something as a family or as a friend group, you build that community for the amount of time you spend with that. It's about how, the amount of time that's invested is about how long something is sustainable. And that's just the natural piece of it. And so if you get young people doing a thing together, they're going to remember that their entire lives, and in 20 years they'll call each other, hey, you remember when we were in Jam and we played, just pick the Museum of Appalachia, for example. We got to be at the Museum of Appalachia and be a part of our own, traditional history. And it's easy to talk about Appalachia like it's one color, but there's an entire African American piece to the banjo and an entire African American creative history that is beautiful and inclusive. So we're not writing that off in any way. Mm-hmm. And there's the literature is since it is February, it's important to mention the literature has just come out of the woodwork in the last 15 years, to my knowledge, about people of color who've had amazing contributions to our creative history in Appalachia and in the Southeast, and that's important to talk about. That's important to include in our discussions of Jam moving forward. So that's the whole point. Quick story, one of my college professors was talking about being a jazz pianist in New York in the 50s, and he was talking about how, in his circle at least, that the issues of racism were mitigated because these guys just wanted to make music together. And jazz music in New York in the 50s and 60s was bringing these folks together. And Jam will be no different. We want the same thing for our community, so in 30 years those kids can have memories to talk about and keep creating more.
Right, and I think that it does that, because if you look at, let's just take Elvis, for example. Elvis drew all of his inspiration from all different aspects and cultures, and he took all of that and created the sound that he had throughout all those years. You heard blues, and you heard, some bluegrass, and you heard country, all from Elvis. And I say Elvis because I love Elvis. And so he impacted me because I didn't have Jam in my life. And if I had had junior Appalachian musicians, I could have done a lot more. And I can't go back and do that now, but I can move forward and help children that they can have an opportunity that I didn't have. And that is super important to me, to impact this community in a way that I'm passionate about. And right now, we're going to pause right there, and then we're going to come back and talk some more about Jam, but we will be right back.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
In East Tennessee, winter can be a wild ride of constantly changing weather and cold outdoor fun. Warm up with natural gas heat, hot water, cooking, and soft, comfy clothes. More affordable and reliable than electricity, natural gas makes homes cozy and more valuable. Whether you're a contractor or savvy homeowner, switch to natural gas for your primary energy source. Visit us online at orud.org or call today. Oak Ridge Utility District, your affordable energy source.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
And we are back. I am Wendy Banis, and I'm filling in for Alan Beauchamp on Between the Lines. And we were just sitting here talking about, they're going to think, well, what does this have to do with politics? Why are we talking about music? It's not political, it's not in the sports, but Jonathan made a great comment during the break. Jonathan, what does this have to do with politics?
Well, it's forgotten now, but we have Al Gore Sr. he used the fiddle in his political campaigns as a mechanism for attracting attention. And the fiddle has an important part of every piece of cultural history, every gathering in Appalachia for some 300-400 years now. And so they were still playing off that in the heydays of the early days of the Grand Ole Opry. Al Gore Sr. was out there very visibly with his fiddle, using it as a campaign piece. And it obviously got him somewhere because his son was able to run for office too. And so since it's cultural, and since the idea that civics and politics and culture things all interplay, like my feeling on politics is that it's the engine by which we settle argument. And it's meant to be somewhat contentious at the level we have to do it. But at the end of the day, we're all supposedly trying to meet the same positive end for the citizenry. And music's the same thing. It's where we can escape some of that divisiveness that we have to endure to continue as the human race.
Right. And we were just talking about Elvis before the break. And Cody also, he was talking about how the father of bluegrass actually, tell him that story.
Yeah. So, we were talking. Elvis recorded one of Bill Monroe's songs. Bill Monroe's the father of bluegrass. He recorded Blue Moon of Kentucky. So, and Jonathan was talking about various influences on the music, and he mentioned the Scots-Irish background of the music, and he also mentioned the African-American influence of the music. In old-time music, you have Native American influences as well. But one of Bill Monroe, again, the father of bluegrass music, one of his big influences was Arnold Schultz. And Arnold Schultz was an African-American blues guitarist. And he is noted as one of the major influences in bluegrass music. In addition to Bill Monroe's uncle, his Uncle Penn, which is Uncle Pendleton Vanderveer is his full name. But there's a famous bluegrass song that Ricky Skaggs and others have recorded called Uncle Penn. So, we were just highlighting some of the different influences on the music over the years.
And isn't it interesting how you name all of those people who have passed their music down, and then you guys have learned that same music, you've taught me the music, and now we're wanting to bring it to Anderson County to teach these children the music, and then the tradition will just keep going and going and going, and who knows how many years that is going to continue. But Cody, if someone wanted to sign up, or if you bring Jam to Anderson County, what do you have to do so people even know about the program? Because we can sit here and talk about it, and we can put it on Facebook or TikTok or wherever, but it's people still don't really know about it. So how do you get the word out?
Yeah. There's a number of moving parts to get a Jam program established and developed. But as far as getting the word out, I would say initially it's a grassroots effort, through social media, through newspaper articles, through things like what we're doing today on local TV. And then one of the big things that we also do is go into the local area public schools and put on cultural enrichment programs where we bring in a band, bluegrass or old-time band, and we play some music. We give a brief history of the music, introduce the different instruments. Sometimes we'll introduce the individual instruments one at a time and show how it fills out the sound and brings in the full bluegrass band sound. And then we'll do, we'll talk about jam and how many of you would like to be a part of jam and what instrument would you like to play. And so, and we work with school administration to get the word out as well.
So if someone wanted to sign up for jam, or even wanted to sign up so that they are in the know for when the chapter does come here to Anderson County, how do they do that?
Here pretty soon we'll provide an interest form link or a registration form link where you can basically sign your child up, and you'll have like a few different instrument selections, and we try to get everyone the instrument that they want to play, but we also have to kind of make sure it's evenly dispersed in terms of we can't have 16 guitars and 2 fiddles and 1 banjo, so yeah.
Right. So you do try to split it out so that when they start learning these instruments, it truly becomes a jam. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't really know what a jam was until I started hanging out with bluegrass players. But they get in a circle and they just play. And they all know the song, and it's like this perfect band that's not even planned, but we're going to plan it with jam.
Oh yeah.
We're going to have them practice, and then we're going to pretend that it wasn't planned. But there's something very magical about watching that spontaneously happen. If you're like we went to Spigma a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. You were there. Jonathan was playing as well, and you were there to promote jam. Mm-hmm. And what is Spigma?
I don't remember the exact acronym, but it was started by Chuck Stearman as a society to preserve and educate bluegrass music. So it's Society for the Preservation of Bluegrass Music in the Americas, I believe, or something very close to that. And they still are very loyal to kind of the middle generation of bluegrass music. Like we have IBMA, which is forward-looking and promoting educational initiatives and all sorts of cultural things in a broader arena. But Spigma's been very loyal to make sure that the area of bluegrass from 1946, when Bill Monroe really recorded the important stuff with Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, the big bang of bluegrass music, up until the 3rd generation. Like that's what Spigma's about. And both organizations, they're somewhat in competition, but I think they're not, because I think they both need to exist. They have slightly different focuses, they have slightly different missions. One is to preserve something in the way that old time needs to be preserved, the way we're talking about old time. And IBMA is definitely like keeping the music alive by bringing new blood into it. And I think that's both important.
And when we went to Spigma, there were people jamming everywhere, like in circles, banjos, fiddles, guitars, just playing music together and having a good time. Again, a sense of community. But you bring up IBMA and Spigma and how they're kind of different, but that's the great thing about jam, because it'll teach them this bluegrass music and then also the old-timey music, but then they go and they take it and make it their own. And so they come up with their own sound, and it's just like Jonathan learned bluegrass, then he majored in classical guitar and has this whole different sound, and you have a magical sound when you play. And if you haven't heard Cody ever play, the two of them together are amazing, but it's just, they're both very, very talented. And I just believe that jam could impact this community in ways that we can't even comprehend right now. Mm-hmm. And not just for the present, but for the future. Mm-hmm. Because I sit here and I listen to your story, Cody, and I listen to Jonathan's, and I know my story, but I know what you two are doing on Monday night with the Appalachian Sessions, which also is trying to take Appalachian music, and then it's kind of like making it its own. So you're taking all of these pop songs or classic songs, and they're adding a banjo or they're adding a fiddle, and making it their own, but they're keeping that Appalachian sound in a way that's your own, which is what jam will do for these kids. But you're impacting the community through playing and promoting literacy and cultural literacy, and you're playing with people like Sean Camp and Chris Blue, who won The Voice, and featuring young musicians like Connor Kelly and Time Warp, who are in a rock band, but they're born, raised, bred musically in the downtown region of Knoxville, and they're all in their 20s, and they're also part of that tradition, even though it's not necessarily acoustic, which is what we're specifically talking about today, the Appalachian piece. They are a form of Appalachian culture in the way they've adapted rock music
while inspired by their region, by their sense of place.
Right, and I love how you learn a style. I did not learn bluegrass growing up because I grew up close to the Mississippi Delta, so mine was more of Elvis, and it was more of like Motown, and that's the style I learned in country, because that definitely comes out when I sing. But being
Or
around
talk.
but being around you guys and learning how important it is to actually like learn some of this bluegrass music as well, and the history of it, and the vocal, because there's a lot of different vocal tones that come out in bluegrass that's not in other genres but influence those genres. And so Jam will teach these kids that, and it's just important to me. And Cody, what do you think would have happened had you not picked up that fiddle?
Gosh, well, I don't know that I could look into the rewind and then look into the future on that trajectory, but I know that that music has certainly enriched my life, and I'm very thankful for bluegrass and old time music, and I'm thankful for the people that I've met through it, for the places that I've been to, and just the beautiful impact it's had on my life.
Well, we look forward to bringing Jam to Anderson County and giving you more information about it. But I was wondering if you two would like play one more song
Sure, yeah.
as we end the night. But I have had so much fun talking about junior Appalachian musicians. Again, this is Cody Bauer and Jonathan Maness. And Cody is the field office director of Junior Appalachian Musicians, and we cannot wait to bring it right here to Anderson County. But I'm going to let them play a little bit and show you what they learned from being a small kid all the way up until now. Thanks so much. What are you going to play for us, Jonathan?
I think we're going to do a little swing numbers. Does that still work for you?
Yeah.
All right, we learned this from Tin Pan Alley, but that's, has become intertwined with Appalachian music. We're going to do a little jazz thing for you. It's called Lady Be Good.
Clap for you guys, because that's like so good. But we are so happy that you tuned in with us tonight to learn about junior Appalachian musicians. And I'm Wendy Maness, filling in for Alan Beauchamp. He'll be back in a couple of weeks. He's taking a little break. It's hard to get him to take a break, but he's taking a break. And I'm so thankful that you came on to tell us a little bit about it, Cody.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you again for having me, and don't forget to check out the website, jamkids.org, if you'd like to learn more.
And if someone is interested, you said you will have that up on the...
Yeah, we're hoping to have that interest form or registration link that I mentioned up, in March sometime.
And Jonathan?
And we'll, just so we're aware how we're going to do this, like Cody and I are planning to do recruitment visits to area schools in Anderson County after Pellissippi semester ends for the month of May, as public schools are winding down. And then at that point, we'll have the interest form, and we'll try and get something started in the summer if at all possible, and in the fall if not.
All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in with us. Jonathan, thank you for coming and hanging out.
Absolutely.
I know you have to hang out with me at home, but thank you for coming here too and sharing your expertise. And we hope that next week you will tune in with us. I will be on the show again with Lori Wilson, Lori-Ann Wilson, the home girl. She does loans. We're going to be talking about the real estate and where it's going in 2023. So come back next week. We will see you soon.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day. Bye. Have a good night.